Go ahead and get started.
Hmm.
So Jaeden and I and a few others on the call are joining you from Louisville, Kentucky. That is our home base for really all of the work that we do, but to the extent that we are ever anchored in helping to prepare the world for the inevitability of multiculturalism. Um, it is a worldview and it is a world reach that we are um, purporting to establish in our work. And just so excited to have all of you from all over the United States to be a part of our conversation tonight. And this is the start, not the finish of these conversations, but really today is focused on introducing you to our latest and greatest undertaking, like the newest offering that we have underneath the Harper Slade umbrella, if you will. And it's called the Common Grove. And this is a community for women and those who are aligned to the potency and the power of our voice and our lens, to really help position our narratives and our advocacy in a more unified way around the advancement of race and equity, and certainly gender equity as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in probably the next slide. So, Jane, would you mind advancing? Or can you? And it probably needs to be on present, like the full screen deal. At least it's not showing up that way on my screen.
Well, it looks like it is from mine. So hang on.
Oh,
Okay, now I'm seeing this. Let's try this again. Can you see this whole thing now?
got it. Yep.
Okay.
So allow us to introduce ourselves in a Jay-Z similar voice. Okay, so I'm Nikki Lanier, and I'm the CEO of Harper Slade. And we are a firm that helps advance a bunch of stuff around racial equity and preparing for multiculturalism. And I am joined today by Jaeden Thomas. And you'll hear from Jaeden a little bit later today, a little bit later, actually, in a few minutes, to talk really in depth about kind of the inner workings and the sausage making, if you will, that is the Common Grove. But so Jaeden and I have been working together to give birth to this newest creation, the Common Grove. So she and I are co-founders of this incredible undertaking, and I'm just so blessed to work with her on this body of work. So next slide. What is the Common Grove's rooting? What is the foundation? So for those of you that know me, and I think that's pretty much everybody on this call, maybe one or two, you likely have heard me talk about 2045, which feels like a very long time away from now. And it is not, especially when you consider the heavy lift that must happen between now and then, when you're thinking about the collapsing of, the softening of, the remediation of the way that race-based inequity has manifested throughout our country, really since the inception of the United States. We position the realities around inequity based on race and gender as threats to the nation's economy, because I want to call your attention to the middle of the screen. Per the Brookings Institute, in a study that was promulgated, I think in 2014, the country will be decidedly Black, brown, meaning Black people, Hispanic people, and women by 2045. And that really means the adults that are available to run our country, to be deployed against the work of our country, to buy things, to save money, to invest, to earn economic buoyancy, and to make things, to produce things. Those folks, those humans, not the AI robotypes, but the humans that are going to be available to be deployed to both consume and produce will be Blacker and browner and ever more female. And that has significant implications to how we think about what must be true for the conditions in which this burgeoning community must be able to thrive so that the economy can run beautifully and without hiccup. So I'm hoping that you're following and tracking that this work for us is less about a social justice leaning, less about right thing to do, and more about saving our country's economy by doing what we've always done, what every economy and every community in every country either does or purports to do, and that is manage its resources by leveraging the fullness of the majority resources. And so for the first time ever in our world already, and soon in our country, the majority resources will be the same people for whom marginalization, muting, stunting, and diminishment has always been a reality for them, especially as it relates to the fundamentals of engagement with the economy. So forgive me if that feels a little heady, but that I think is the anchoring that is fairly universal, an anchoring that most people, even from the CEO of a large corporation, all the way to a family member in each of our families, could probably align against. It brings a neutral palette to the way that we are thinking about the advancement of this work, and it positions the enemy, if you will, as this ideal, as this belief system called racism and sexism. That's what we are at war with. Not a person, not a political party, not a race, not a religion. We are at war with a belief system, and that belief system is coming for all of our homes, all of our livelihoods, all of our families. So I don't know if I beat that horse to death, but that's kind of where we stand with that. So the Brookings Institute is the seminal study upon which we rely in trying to find all kinds of ways to help communities, corporate organizations, cities, families, and individuals really deeply understand how to reset our individual and collective posture, priorities, narratives, advocacy, so that we can collectively reimagine the America that must be over the next 19 years. In our world, the Harper Slade world that Jaeden and I are tethered to, there are a number of products and services that have been birthed because of that. The seminal one is the Harper Slade. That is our kind of bread and butter, if you will. That's our corporate facing arm where we work with companies all over the world to help them prepare for the inevitability of multiculturalism, both from the consumer lens and from the workforce development lens. We look at their entire employee life cycle, how employees come into the organization, even how they exit, and help employers understand what must be reset and recast in order to be to court and fully leverage the talent that is ever now burgeoning. So that is the corporate facing arm. Inside of that, we've got a service offering called The Table, and that's a community of employer leaders, individual leaders inside of employer constructs who come together with us several times a year, both for in-person meetings and virtual meetings, to help sharpen each other's iron, to ensure that, unlike conference engagements sometimes that are large and unwieldy oftentimes, and perhaps not really getting down to the level of granularity that these executives need to role play and to fashion certain responses to what's in front of them du jour, like the crisis du jour. That's what the table stands to do, purports to do, is to work with these leaders and these executives in real time inside of a community of their peers, to help problem solve and ensure that they are moving forward with strategy that can be executed and that is tried and true. The Rare Woman Collective, some of you might have heard of that. We've got a couple of members of the Rare Woman Collective even on this call. So the Rare Woman Collective, RARE stands for Radical Action Advancing Racial Equity. This is our program suite for white women designed to help white women understand how to leverage their whiteness in communities with other white people to advance racial equity. This is less about, RARE is less about, the connective points and the connective tissue between Black and white people, and more about how to fully deploy white women for whom this work is already interesting, they're already curious about it, and really want to learn how, with grace-centered advocacy, to move racial equity forward in the spaces and places that they're already in with their families, loved ones, children, spouses, aunties, uncles, all those things, leveraging the position of the know, like, and trust family. So know, like, and trust factors. So we've got 3,000 women in that group from all over the world. We've got 5 different countries represented, and very excited about the work that we've been able to promulgate with the Rare Woman Collective. And then last year, I wrote a workbook, and it's called Uncommon Ground. It is designed for mothers, really parents, caregivers, educators of young children, to help demystify for those adults how to engage with those children on issues of race and equity and difference in culture. It is often the case, as I have found, I'm curious whether you all would agree with this or not, but it is very easy, especially in segregated cities, of which Jaeden and I live, to grow up with races and cultures never really deeply understanding the other. Still, even in this day, 2026, inside of segregated cities, especially but not exclusively, it is too easy to grow up inside of a bubble where the people that you go to school with, the folks that are exposed, that get exposure to you by your parents, the camps that you attend, the sleepovers that you go to, the churches that you might attend, your social activities, all feel more homogeneous than not. And so then what happens is by the time you're in your 20s and starting your career, that is usually for a lot of folks the very first time that they have, with regular occasion, regular occurrence, engage with people who are different from them with regularity. And all they have to bring to that engagement is a narrative that has been told to them, that has been sold to them about who people are who are different. And so the idea here is that if we could invite parents and equip parents and caregivers and educators of children at very young ages to see the beauty and value of all people, especially those who are different from them, without assigning the societal narrative of difference equals deficit, then we are well positioned for the 2045 reality. So this is yet another way that we are working with schools and parenting groups and homeschool groups with the navigation of difference in age appropriate ways that feel as though there's something tangible for these adults to hold on to so that they don't feel so ill-equipped in having these conversations. And the last, and what we're talking about today, is the common grove. And I'm going to turn it over to Jaeden in just a second to talk about that. But the common grove really was birthed from, I guess, statements and comments, kind of taglines that I talk about a lot, all of us talk about in Harper Slade, to try to help people understand how important your how is in promulgating this work. It has been my experience that when people are talking about race and racism and equity and fairness and all the things, they tend to do so, and understandably, with so much emotion and so much ire and so much of the clap back and the call out and the call in and the, reckless words, in my opinion, fairly reckless words that cause more of a divide than they do helping to bridge understanding. We see racial equity work as healing wounds, not inflicting them. It has to feel like an invitation to believe something else. In my opinion, that's what racial equity advocacy has to feel like. And so core to that is this notion of grace. If you follow me on social media, you've seen me talk a lot about grace over gotcha, because it is not just the pinnacle of how we think about our how with all of our brands, but it informs the way that I think humans need to feel about engagements on this very, very tough topic. None of us understand how to talk well with the other about this topic. None of us, me included, right? So we're all learning, and we all have to practice, and we all have to do this work with deliberate grace and not fall into the habits and the patterns of this gotcha mentality. You didn't say this right. You have to call these people this thing. They don't want to be referred to as that. You got to only refer to this. You got to make sure you're using that, right? And so it becomes this whole gotcha game on using the right nomenclature versus let's just explore what you've been taught already, what you already have been conditioned to believe about people who are different. And let's just work through whether that continues to serve you or not. Like, is that kind of what you still want to bring with you into this level of your adulthood at this dispensation in time? And let's patiently, with grace, understand how to invite people into a different way of perceiving and believing and emoting on this very, very difficult, highly volatile, politically fraught topic. So Grace Over Gotcha is our kind of signature launching point for the Common Grove, which is our social awareness community and the branding that supports that community. So with that, Jaeden, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about Common Grove.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. So Nikki and I, can y'all hear me? We good? Okay. Nikki and I started working on the Common Grove a little over a year ago now, I believe. And she first came to me with this idea of taking a lot of the slogans like Grace Over Gotcha and other things she says. And it's like, okay, let's put it on t-shirts, let's get it out. We want to start moving some of this thinking from the corporate spaces or from Rare just kind of out in the world. And so this idea of a walking billboard is kind of what we launched from. That was what gave birth to this whole idea, starting with Grace Over Gotcha, which is really the foundation of all the work that we do under Harper Slade. And as I was thinking more about that, I was like, okay, well, we don't want it to just be like a slogan on a t-shirt, because this is like some of these things could um, honestly make some people feel some type of way. And so we started mulling over the idea of these being more of conversation starters, even than um, just a walking billboard, so to speak. And so the more we were thinking through this and the more research that I started doing, we came up with this idea of merch as conversation starters for advocacy. And just a little quick aside about that. We talk about advocacy rather than activism, because advocacy is relational and activism is more systems focused. And we want to do work with women in particular, with the people that they are in relationship with or who they could be in relationship with, because we believe that hearts and minds can be changed in those meaningful relationships. So we did more thinking, more research, and not only did we want to have advocacy as a piece of this and these conversation starters, we wanted women to feel enabled and empowered to understand these phrases and understand the way that we think about them and the way that they could enter into conversation. So we're like, okay, well, we need a community. So after more thinking and more research, we came up with this idea of the Common Grove. So the Common Grove is a very intentional name. And so part of what we've done, and the way that we think about advocacy, which I'll address in just a second, is in a symbiotic relationship where all of the parts are functioning together as a whole. And we believe that people, when they are like really working together in relationship in a community, they would function together like a beautiful ecosystem of a forest. So taking instead of a whole forest, focusing on one small grove, and we like to think about this work as hopefully someday being done within local groves. And so we've built up our Louisville Grove, and we actually have one of our ambassadors, Renly, on the call with us. And so this idea of community that is working together both in person and online. And so we know that a lot of online communities got built up during COVID. And in the last couple of years, people have really been craving that in-person, face-to-face connection. And so we are looking to do both. So I'm super excited. Y'all are actually the first people ever, besides me and Nikki, to see our new logo. And so we saw one version on the title slide, and then we also have this one as well. And so we worked with a woman who is local to Louisville, Katie Rollins of So Good Design. And she did just an absolutely incredible job. These flowers you'll see again in a minute. But so we were thinking about a grove and working together, and then this idea of holding things together in common and have it working towards a common good. So that's why you have the Common Grove. So kind of getting at that community and that togetherness, but also thinking about how this could fit into this whole ecosystem. And another thing that we really wanted to do was really to like think about this world that we want to build. And we wanted to build a world where the world that must be, which is one where racism can't exist. So we have all of these parts working together in our grove. And so this is a depiction of our grove. We worked with another local artist here in Louisville, Lizzie Wolf, and she does linocut printing. And she first sketched this out and then put it into a linoleum block, printed it, and then digitized it. So we're also working with women who are here locally and just really focused on encouraging and building one another up. So building this world that must be. Now this kind of takes me into the way that we think about advocacy. So I talked about this ecosystem and the forest working all together. And a couple of you on here know me. And if you don't, I love to research. I can get like really into the weeds, no pun intended. But I love details, but I also love the big picture and how all of those intricate details work together. So I did a lot of research on forests and how they function together. Um, if you have not heard of mycorrhizal connections with plants, I highly recommend looking it up. And you can search that just through the Wood Wide Web. There's this idea. So instead of World Wide Web, wood, like a tree would. Um, and there is this understanding that plants communicate through their root system, and those connections are able to happen because of fungi. So all four of these plants that you see here, so we have trees, mushrooms, ferns, and flowers. These are all four plants that you would find, four plant families that you would find in a forest ecosystem that help each other out in some way or another. So we have our trees, kind of our resource gatherers, and they can share out those nutrients and those resources with other plants. The fungi are our connectors. The ferns are our renewers and our restorers. And the flowers, we think of them as kind of the signal fire. And so a flower would tell you that something is not right in that environment. And so we have taken these four distinct plant families, and that is how we think about the four different ways that people most often approach the work of advocacy. So we have, our people who they have resources or they have connections to resources that they can then take. We have our mushrooms or our people, just kind of like the way that the actual plant functions is the way that people would function within this larger plant family type ecosystem. And so we have created a quiz so that you can find out what your plant family type is. And we're also super excited to give you access to that today. That will be part of our online community that we're building through our website, which doesn't officially launch until August 1. So we're still working behind the scenes to build that up. But we have this desire that everyone can understand a little bit more about the way that they would naturally show up as an advocate. And we think that's very much connected to the way that you show care for people. So we like to say, if you care about people, you already belong here in the Common Grove. So yeah, and then we're taking that and we're taking this understanding. So once you kind of understand your own individual archetype for advocacy, then we want you to feel really rooted in community. And so we have a large Common Grove online community that we're building out, as well as online individual plant families. But then that in-person component is also super important. So like I said, we've got our Louisville Common Grove chapter is already doing really well. We've had a couple of events already. We had a bouquet making event. If y'all follow us on social media, you saw some stuff about that. But the women in these pictures are our actual ambassadors. And so we got together and did a little brand shoot together. But we'll be doing in-person events monthly. And so some of them will be larger events and some of them will just be coming together, having coffee and talking through some of this work together. So want to make sure that we are supporting one another as we are growing in advocacy. And then here are some more photos of some of the merch that we already have. And now that we have our new logo, we'll be creating some more stuff. But we did still want to come back to that original idea of these conversation starters. And so we've put them on Grace Ever Gotcha on t-shirts, stickers, keychains, and we did not have our tote bags in time for the brand shoot. So here's a photo of me with our tote bag showing that off. But still using these things, like I've got here's my water bottle with my Grace Ever Gotcha sticker on it. And so just wanting to be prepared. So we ask our ambassadors, if you're wearing your t-shirt out in public or if you have your sticker, just be ready for a conversation because we want to invite that curiosity in that conversation. And one of the reasons why we wanted to be super intentional with our designs was we also just wanted something that was beautiful that people might just compliment and have no idea what it's about and just be like, oh, I really like your sticker or I really like your t-shirt, which has happened to me several times. And then it gives you just like even 10 seconds to be like, oh, thank you. This is what it means. And so just a really simple way to actually not just equip, but then to spark a moment of advocacy. All right.
Okay, so what do we need from you? You might imagine we need your help, ladies. We need your help. We need your help. A couple things. We are just starting this community. We're very much in our infancy, though I'm super happy that we've matured our Louisville chapter thus far, and we've got a lot of great traction on social media. really where the rubber meets the road is in people understanding how to invoke the common grove, what it means for them, what kind of supportive community this could look like and feel like, how to think about the plant families and the distinction and the unique opportunity that it is for them to understand how to assign value to the way that you advocate, however that is. Not everybody is going to be, kind of burning bras, if you will, in Washington, D.C. and marching in the streets. And that's okay. Others have very different, sometimes more reserved styles of approaching advocacy. They all work, they're all relevant. It's just a matter of persistence and consistency and coalescing. So we need to get the word out about the Common Grove. So I'm not going to ask you to talk to everyone in your community, everyone among your connections, but I would ask that within the next few days, you find 2 friends to talk to about this thing called Common Grove, the Common Grove, and invite them to follow us on social media and sign up for our mailing list. You'll have in your follow-up email all of the links to those. So just know that that is coming. And if you haven't already, we'd love for you to sign up for our email list. Jaeden, how often are we sending out emails for the Grove community?
About once a week
Yep. So it's
at
really good
most.
information, kind of giving you updates on where we are as we're growing, introducing you to our ambassadors thus far, really just kind of orienting you to the community and how we think about advocacy through our inaugural phrase, Grace Over Gotcha. So please sign up for our email list if you haven't already. Share your advocacy archetype on social media. And if you could do that by Monday, that would be fantastic. We're on Instagram and TikTok, though if you're on neither of those, but on perhaps Facebook or what's the other one, Threads or somebody else, feel free to do it there, and just let us know so that we can reference that. Or if you are on TikTok or Instagram and tag us, that would be fantastic. But something as very simple as I'm in the Common Grove, I am a tree, or I'm a mushroom, or I'm a flower. And it begs the question of what is the Common Grove? So another opportunity to invite some conversation with your community. And you can tell folks you participated in this call today and got a chance to really understand how another vehicle, another platform for advancing equity talks is being manifested through the Harper Slade brand, for purposes of helping women really grow in our depth and our lens and our impact in moving this work forward. So if you could do that by Monday, that would be great. Also, that will be included in your follow-up email. And then importantly, we're really looking to target organizations who already are convening women, of all ages, really, and also interested in changing the world. Social groups are great, and oftentimes we can get a lot of attraction there, but women who are purposed around the evolution of what must be true in our communities, in our families, in our workplaces, in our cities, in our states, where the women that are already doing that work, we would love to get an audience with them and bring in some of our events. So come and partner with them, come alongside with them in our Grove specific experiences, both conversations and experiences and immersive activities to help people understand what it's like to be a part of this community, but also what it's like to be an advocate for the work that we would all like to see in this community. And so we do that with Grove-inspired themes. As was mentioned earlier, we had a floral bouquet making event maybe a month ago. And just kind of really thinking about forestry, the ecosystems, being outdoors together, finding ways to find the beauty in the intricacies and the interdependencies of how flowers and trees and mushrooms and ferns kind of all work together for a common good. We're really looking for organizations that might be interested in partnering with us. So if you are a member of or know of an organization that we should know or should know us, please introduce us. Please introduce us. We'll make sure you have our email addresses for that purpose. But just something as simple as sending along an email to us with the names of those folks, or if you are so inclined, fostering a warm kind of handoff introduction, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. So if there are any other questions or comments, any reactions, honestly, please feel free to share those now. Anything that you thought is missing or that we need to be thinking about differently, or explore with perhaps different communities and what we've outlined. We'd love to hear that. This is, as we close out, and another wonderful photo of some of our ambassadors and our chapter here in Louisville. Super excited about the work that these women are doing and that they're doing individually and collectively in advancing these conversations in every space they have. So with that, we'll stop sharing and just let me open up the floor to any other thoughts.